Hey, what's happening, guys? I'm back. Today I'm gonna be reacting to some of the worst hair transplants that I've seen on one of the Spanish forums. Recuperar tu pelo. ¿Nani? Excuse me. I came across this post completely by random, and from my understanding the reason for it is just to show to people what's the worst that can possibly happen when you're getting a hair transplant, specifically a bad hair transplant. What's the worst that can happen? I'm bald anyways. It can get much worse, and we're gonna look into how worse it can get. Before we start, quickly, if you're new here, my name is Rolandas. I had 2 hair transplants, over 6,500 grafts. I was normal 5A, meaning I was pretty much bald all over the top. I had no hairline, and right now it looks absolutely amazing. Absolutely loving it. And if you want to end up just like me, not like these guys that we're gonna be looking just in a moment, you have to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content on hair transplants and hair loss education, so you can make the right decision for yourself. Just gonna go quickly to these pictures and share my thoughts, what went wrong and what could possibly be done to fix the issue, and you know, what could be done to prevent even this issue from happening in the first place. So let's go. Donor overharvesting is happening when the person who is extracting the grafts is doing too many extractions way close to each other. Most of the time it's going to be a combination of a temporary and a permanent shock loss. Temporary shock loss means that after about 3 months, some of the hairs will grow back because they went into premature telogen effluvium, which is a resting phase basically, due to surrounding trauma. Permanent shock loss occurs when the person extracting the grafts is directly damaging the surrounding hair, so basically there is no chance they're gonna grow back. And to be honest, if you look even at the top, like I don't see any growth, so what, like so many extractions done for what exactly? And since the scalp looks pretty healthy, it looks like it's definitely been already healed, like way in the future, like, you know, 6 to 12 months. This is a so-called necrosis. Is a really bad thing. It's basically overuse of anesthesia and too many implantations in a small area, basically together bunched, in order to create like a dense, you know, appearance, but sometimes can be counterproductive. Gonna create a lack of blood supply to this specific area because too many hairs gonna be competing for the same amount of blood, and thus none of them gonna get enough, and all of them basically gonna die, creating this kind of a scar tissue, which is really bad. After that, of course, you can still transplant the hairs into the scar tissue, but the survival rate is going to be much lower than normal, you know, healthy skin. This is just a properly botched FE transplant, and like it looks like they just took everything. Really bad. I don't think this kind of results happen very often. This is like someone extremely uneducated. It seems like just any random person from the street, you know, came to the clinic. They told him, okay, just do like that extractions, we're gonna extract, we're gonna implant, and he says, yeah, let's do it. And he just like extracts everything, what he sees, without even like thinking, oh, wait a second, he needs to preserve something, so the person can cover the scars. Really bad. Example of Spanish clinic that operates with a robot and charges top prices. Well, by the way, if you're thinking paying a top price equals top quality, this is not the case. Good transplant can cost little, it can cost a lot. Prices can be influenced in various ways, but this is not the topic of the video, maybe in the future. In this case, the extractions could have been, you know, taken from a bit wider area, but to be honest, look at this patient, donor and like recipient area. He's a Norwood 7. It's like the donor area was very thin and a very big area to cover with the transplant. So I would say he was not a candidate for a surgery to begin with. If you really wanted to have some hair, not close even to being a great head of hair, you should have gone for FET route, because as you see here, the crown dips very low and there is a little bit of a retrograde alopecia here, so it's very thin, like a strip of a healthy donor area where the hair can be used for a transplant. So in this case, 1, maybe 2 strips would have served him the best. Here's an interesting one. This is the before pictures of this guy. Very minimum hair loss. I'm not sure if he was on the medication, but most likely if you're gonna jump on finasteride and minoxidil, his crown mid-scalp just gonna recover completely, and maybe just to be honest, I don't think even he would need a transplant. Even the hairline slightly, it looks like a mature hairline, to be honest, not really that receded. But here we are, he got pretty bad transplant, because the density is like, what is the point of transplanting just like a 3 grafts per centimeter square? It's just not gonna be close to have any kind of visual density. And at the end, after the transplant, he looks much worse than he was looking before. What happened? Probably shock loss, because they didn't transplant a lot of hairs, but when they've been doing incisions, they most likely damaged a lot of surrounding hairs that could have been saved otherwise with you know, medication. They're just permanently dead, and he looks much worse than, you know, he was looking before transplant. Of course, survival pretty much you know, non-existent, I would say. And the problem is his donor as well. His donor was over-harvested, clearly, because there are spots where you can clearly see through his scalp. And it appears that he had a really good donor area. Like his hair was medium to thick, I would say, and dark, but like with such a long hair, you can see through it really, really bad. So he doesn't have much donor left to try to repair it. So he would need to use a lot of body hairs and try to homogenize the donor to extract from the thicker areas, just like over here, and possibly implant in the top and make the whole donor kind of more homogeneously thin. You're gonna look much better than just like, you know, patches like a moth eaten. Yeah, another over-harvested donor area. And yeah, you can clearly see patches here and there. It's just too many extractions done in a small, you know, spot, small area, basically. Another classic example of over-harvesting, just done in a very, very small, narrow area. Like, why they didn't use this area? There is so much of healthy donor all over this area that it's not been used, not been utilized. It's just, it's very, very stupid. And yeah, there you go. You see, he went probably for repair, and maybe not as low here, but definitely he could go as high as, you know, this area too. It just looks so raw. It's really bad. Ouch, this looks, poor guy. And imagine, so what do you do in this case? What you could possibly do? That's it. You're gonna be like that for the rest of your life. It's like, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen that you're gonna be not just bald on the top, you're gonna be bald on the back, and you will wish to go back to look normally bald again. And in this case, if you decide, I'm just gonna shave it, bro. It's not gonna work, because once you shave your whole head, you're gonna have a tiny thousands of these dots all around your scalp. And God knows, maybe they even, by making incorrect depth of the incisions, maybe they even, implanting the grafts in the incorrect depth, maybe they even destroyed basically the whole like proper surface of your top, that it created like a bumpy appearance, like a pitting or cobblestoning or anything like that, that it's just gonna stand out. If you look at most of these people, they're really not even a candidate for a hair transplant to begin with. But as we know, a lot of clinics, they're just gonna take your money regardless. You know, they don't care whether you're gonna be happy with your result or not. They just care about the money. Holy cow, this is just like, it's not, the problem here is not just the density is very low, it's just the hairline design is completely unnatural. It's implanted in rows. Like, you can clearly see rows. Like, it's just, this is not how hair grows in nature. Just compare how the hair grows here, like in completely unpredictable, like a random pattern, and here rows. Like, seriously? Not to mention that he will not gonna even have anything close to his native density over here. It's gonna be extremely, extremely thin, and probably even pluggy, I would assume. And just design is really terrible. On the flip side, it's a small work, and we don't see his donor, but if his donor is still intact, he can pretty easily, I would say, fix it. It's not going to be 100% fixed, because you cannot fix the incorrect implantation angles. He can plant in the front some more single grafts to make it look more natural, and of course add some more density all over the place, and obviously restructure the hairline, because it looks absolutely unnatural. Look at the skin, how raw it is. It's like, when they've been doing extractions, maybe this person even got some, you know, folliculitis or something. It's really bad. When, you know, some clinics, they're just not properly cleaning their instruments. They're not disinfecting them. And people are getting folliculitis, and then they blaming it on a patient. It's really bad. This looks like a repair case from Dr. Jose Lorenzo in Spain, in injertocapillar.com. I think he's doing a lot of donor fit farming, basically, so-called, the donor kind of homogenation. He is extracting from the thicker areas and implanting back to those areas that are thinner, so the person looks kind of normal. Again, over-harvesting, donor over-harvesting. The same necrosis, gonna be, we already seen how it's gonna look. Gonna be a big scar. Ooh, this is just like, it's almost as bold as his, you know, as his crown. Like, this is really bad. Another huge area of necrosis. Just imagine, like, you're going to get a hair transplant with all this best faith that finally gonna have more hair on your head, and then you have this. I don't know, if I would be this guy, I'll be freaking out, like legit. And I'm not trying to scare you guys, but going to bad places, these things happen. Necrosis is one of the worst in the recipient area because it's something that you pretty much cannot fix. Like once it's done, that's it. There is going to be a scar tissue. You can try to implant hairs, and some of them gonna grow to help and hide this scar in between the hairs, but that's it. It's a scar tissue. This is another example of extremely pluggy. Like, okay, let's just skip away all the density, but very few grafts that are transplanted, they're like thick, double, triple, quad, even 5 hair graft, like a super huge grafts. And to be honest, most of the transplants, the bad transplants that I've seen, they have a good density, but they have a hairline reconstructed mainly from this type of grafts. And imagine, it just looks like a doll's hair. It looks really pluggy, which is very unnatural. Some of the like Indian, Turkish, clinics, they're operating like on 20 plus people per day. This is how it looks. Of course, not all of them are like this. This is a very, very low class budget. It's like the worst of the worst. Again, 2 things: necrosis, rose, and low density. It's never gonna look natural. It's never supposed to be looking natural, like minus necrosis. Another donor area, and while the scar tissue, to be honest, that's how it looks. It looks white. My donor scars look pretty much exactly the same, but the problem here is the extraction pattern. It's very random. Why they didn't go all the way here? Why they just went here higher, went here lower? Like extracted too many like grafts close to each other. For example, here, like there's like such a big gaps that even when the hair gonna grow longer, it's gonna be very big difference between this area and this. Like they should not extract so many hairs in here, and they should have extracted hairs from here and like try to do it in a homogeneous way. And most of these places, they don't care about the extraction pattern at all. They just take the punch and like punch, like whatever, like out of 20 grafts, 5 gonna be viable and it's gonna be fine, and that's it. And they're gonna of course implant all of them, and that's how basically low survival happens. For me, it's always sad to see such poor work to being done on these poor people, because let's be real, these people, they going there with their biggest faith that they're gonna have more hair and gonna be looking great. However, the reality is completely opposite, and it's really sad. Most of the bad outcomes, even if these people decide to go publicly online and show them, most of them are silenced from the clinics. They just pay to the people to delete or threaten with a lawsuit or whatnot, and these things happen. I've talked personally to many people that been to the situation. So always be aware when you're doing your research. And if you're still not sure what exactly you need to look for when doing your research, you don't know what doing your research means, check out this video over here on the top right corner for you, where I explain pretty much basic few steps when you're doing your research to find the best clinic for your case. Stay tuned.